Good morning. Hope you've had a lovely weekend. Back to it. As you know, I like Mondays, and I'm really excited this morning because I've got a great guest to talk to, which I'll introduce in a moment. And then I'll go paddleboarding for the first time with Joe Mosley, Healthy Happy 50. And I've wanted to do it for ages, so I'm super excited today. So I'm definitely stepping out my comfort zone and try something new. So I hope you have a really great week planned. This morning, we are going to be talking about a subject that I know all too well about, and nearly every guest I've talked to on the podcast has mentioned this in their conversations, imposter syndrome. So I will be talking to the fabulous coach, Trisha Barker from the Imposter Syndrome Solution. Good morning, Tricia.
Hi, Rachel.
Good morning. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk to me today. We met, I actually kept listening to one of your talks with Ali Mortimer, who is Heal Yourself Happy, and you were fantastic. So I thought, yeah, I've got to get you on. Because it's a subject that I know all too about. And as I said in the introduction, nearly every podcast woman that I have on, they always mention it in their conversation. So we are talking the imposter syndrome, the dreaded imposter syndrome. So before we get going, how do you describe your role and what you do as a coach in this department?
So what I would say is I'm a recovering imposter. Just like all of your guests, like you, we need to normalize this, that the majority of us feel this way at some time or other. When I look back now, I experienced imposter syndrome from a young child, and I can see the patterns there now. But really, it started when I started to progress really well in my corporate career. And I was forever waiting for someone to tell me, no, I think we got it wrong. You don't really belong here. You haven't got the skills. So I spent the whole of my corporate career really in this horrible state of anxiety, really self-depreciation, and just not enjoying actually what I did. So when I was experiencing it, there was no such thing. I'm showing my age now. There's no such thing as the internet or social media. You didn't know what this thing was that you were experiencing. And interestingly, I started to work with a coach. I started to work on myself, what I thought about myself. And I started to actually overcome imposter syndrome without actually knowing what it was. And once I actually discovered it had a name, and actually lots of other people felt that way, I just felt called that this is what I'm supposed to do. I can help people who are experiencing exactly what I have. I've been in their shoes. I still get in their shoes from time to time. So that's really what drew me to doing the work, is because really I needed the work myself in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it, that you've experienced it and you know all about it, and you've learned through that journey to manage it. And it is, like you said, you do have bad days and good days, and it is about managing it, isn't it? You're never going to get rid of it completely, do you think?
For me, the intensity to which I feel it now isn't as often. And when I do, I recognize it earlier, whereas before I didn't. And now I sort of say, like, I've got a tool belt of all these different tools and techniques that I carry around with me, and you just use them. But it's interesting how you said, does it come up? You can be going, and everyone might resonate with this. You might be going along and think, oh yeah, I'm doing all right, and I'm feeling okay, and I'm feeling good about myself. And then you get a new situation or a promotion or something that you haven't done before or not done in a while. And I call it like another level, another devil. You know, you're going along, and then all of a sudden it pops back up and you think, what's wrong with me? But it comes back because it's just because you're up leveling, you're doing something different, and it's sort of, it can pop up. So sometimes people say to me, it's come back. No, it'll always be there. It's just the intensity to which you feel it, and when you experience it might be different. But I haven't met anyone yet that has completely eradicated it. And I don't sit here as someone who works with people who says, I don't get it anymore, because I do. I've had it since I was 10 years old.
And how do you define it? How would you describe imposter syndrome?
So the phrase is for someone who doubts their abilities, but I look at it a little bit more than that. It's a little bit of this, you don't feel like you belong in some spaces, like you feel underqualified for whatever you're doing, whether that's in your professional thing, whether it's as a mother. You know, people experience imposter syndrome as a mother now. It's just you feel underqualified, and like no matter what you do, it's just not good enough. And that perpetuates into that you don't feel that you are good enough. That's what I literally put it down to.
I could completely relate to it because I started this new career in modelling 4 years ago at 46. And so it's been a real journey. And there has been moments where I have really struggled with the imposter syndrome because I've thought, I'm waiting for them to say, actually, no, we found her out. She actually can't do it. She's not as good as we thought she was. And it's been a real journey. And like you say, it's always there under the surface.
Yeah.
It's bubbling away each time you step out of your comfort zone. But it could be hugely debilitating though, can't it, to people? It can really stop people.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two types of behavior that can come out with imposter syndrome. One is you're overworking to prove yourself that you're good enough. So you're overcommitting to everything, relationships, you've no boundaries, you're overworking, you work on holidays, all of that. But there's the other one, which is avoid. And that's the sort of the hiding, saying no, and not wanting to step out of your comfort zone. So a lot of people may be coasting along in the, hiding away, not really doing anything. And as soon as you go to step out of your comfort zone, up it pops to say hello and try and stop you in your tracks. But what we've got to realize is our brain really is designed for one thing, and that is to keep us safe. It's not designed for anything else. So anything that your brain thinks is danger, it's going to try and stop you. And it's going to try and stop you by creating these feelings in your body, or it's going to create things in your head that tells you don't do it, or you're going to look stupid. Oh, like you just said, when you start something new, they're going to say, oh, actually, you're not a good fit for this. Your brain will do anything to keep you safe. Your brain actually wants you to stay in your comfort zone. So all it's doing is, it's like a game you've got to play with your brain. Okay, I see you. You're just trying to keep me safe. Thank you. Because people say to me that they don't want to like this inner imposter in them, but you've got to see that inner imposter with compassion. She or he or it is just trying to keep you safe. That's all it's trying to do. So
that's such a good way of looking at it. Is to your initial impact is to want to really absolutely squash it and be so negative about it and say you're not welcome in here. There's no place for you. And maybe if you are more compassionate to that part of you, you can manage it better. Yeah,
it's scared. It's just trying to keep you safe. And I've heard people say, call it your inner bitch or whatever. For me, that doesn't work. It doesn't. You don't need to call any part of you a bitch. It's just there's no need for it. There's a purpose. She's got an intention. She is literally trying to keep you safe, but you just don't have to believe everything she says. You've got people in your life that if they talk to you, you don't believe everything they say. You take some of what they say and not all of it. Why is it when we have our own brain that we believe everything that we say in our own head, but in the world around us, we question things? We have to turn it back in and start to question, no, actually, I'm not having this today. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I am going to do this thing anyway.
You're so right, because it's like we're on automatic pilots with our own brains, isn't it? That we just accept everything that comes up in it without questioning it. That's so true.
Yeah. So once you start to know that it has an intention, and because it's got that intention, it's going to be a little bit mean and it's going to try and do things to you, then you can start to question it.
So how do you get going with this? How do you make those first steps to understanding it better and to managing it?
Well, I would say, first of all, imposter syndrome thrives in isolation. If you've ever heard Brené Brown talk, she talks about shame and vulnerability. This sort of thing thrives. She says it's like you put it in a petri dish and it starts to grow because we keep it hidden. We're shameful about it. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be seen as weak. But the more that we keep all of these feelings about ourselves inside, we allow it to grow. So just imagine we're keeping it inside. It's like we're putting little Miracle Grow. We're drinking it every day and it's just getting more and more powerful. As soon as you say it out loud, you don't even have to say it to anyone else. Anyone listening now, just say, yes, I experience imposter syndrome. As soon as you do it, you've given air to it. So I always say, find your fraud squad. Find people who you can talk to about, do you know, today I'm feeling this way. I can't believe that I'm waiting for my boss to come and tell me that I'm not good enough. Now, if you've got those people, brilliant. If you haven't, they're going to come along sometime in your life. A lot of the people who I surround myself with now, I didn't know them years ago.
Yeah.
You're going to find them. Just trust in that.
Yeah.
But even if you just write it on a piece of paper, just start to get that out. Have the self-awareness that you're experiencing it. Am I having feelings or thoughts, or am I behaving in a way that makes me feel like I don't belong, like I'm underqualified, like who am I to do this? That's the awareness. As soon as you start to have the awareness, you start to take the power away. And then really it's about starting to change what you believe about yourself. And that really, for me, is what I do with a lot of my clients. That's what centers in the middle of our work together. Because what we believe about ourselves is generated from the age of 0 to 7, what we believe about ourselves and the world around us. So if we started at that point to sort of doubt our own abilities and whether we were good enough at things, then we just carry on reinforcing that throughout our life. And we put ourselves in situations and we carry on believing all of this stuff. So just start to realize, anyone on here who may be brought up in conventional UK, you were taught to believe in Father Christmas. And that's a prime example of you believed in him. No matter what anyone told you, they took you to supermarkets and grottos to visit him. You put all the things out for him. But over a period of time, you started to get evidence that actually he might not exist. And most people on this now will realize that they don't believe in him anymore. And it's exactly the same for ourselves. We were given lots of different beliefs. And I always think nobody wanted us to believe bad things about ourselves. Everybody does things with a positive intention, whether that's a parent, a sibling, a teacher, or through our experiences that we had and how we put them into our brain, we started to create these beliefs. But the same as Father Christmas, you can change it. You know, if you don't believe in Father Christmas now, then that shows that you can change your beliefs. So that's a massive thing, is just start to question what you believe about yourself and look for evidence to prove it wrong, because there's not lots of evidence actually that sits behind these beliefs. When you really start to dig, why do you believe that? And is it really true? A lot of people are like, no, actually, it's not true.
Yeah. Do you think journaling is a good idea for all this? Do you think it's a really good idea? I've started journaling and I've had it.
Yeah, massively. Really, for me, I started journaling about gratitude first. I am naturally an optimistic person, but imposter syndrome could make me very pessimistic. So I found myself in a spot in my life where I was thinking negative about bloody everything. And I thought, right, I'm going to start journaling and I'm just going to start to do 3 things that I'm grateful for. What I found was, because I was helping my brain to think more positively, not even about myself, but the world around me, and see things, it actually helped me to start to change things that I could see. Oh, well, maybe actually that situation wasn't right. So definitely I journal. I've been journaling over 10 years now. And if I'm ever in a funk, I haven't been journaling.
Right.
I don't know if you find that.
Well, I started at the beginning of lockdown with the gratitudes,
right,
because I am, like you, I'm normally a really positive person, and I found it completely knocks that out of me. And then the imposter syndrome rose up because my confidence had been knocked because I wasn't working as much, and it was like a vicious circle. So that really has helped me. And then I've started to take not just the gratitude, but I've found I'm journaling a lot more, and it's definitely helping.
Yeah, and a lot of people told me to journal. You know, I would read magazine articles or anything about building your own inner confidence, and it would say journal. But what I found was I'd have a journal and I think, well, I don't know what to write in it. Or I was so bothered about it being perfect, which again can be another tendency of an imposter syndrome. So I designed some cards to help you. Sorry, that's mine.
It's all right. Oh,
that's my little pooch. I designed some questions to ask yourself that can help you actually to build that inner confidence, to build that self-belief, to build self-compassion. That's one of the things that I think is really important, is to be more compassionate to yourself. Like whatever situation, I find people beat themselves up way too much for doing too much, not doing enough, not showing up right, saying the wrong thing, writing the wrong thing, just all of this real, like I say, self-depreciation. It's not nice.
Do you think it's a real female trait, that? Because
Massively.
it's not. I don't come across many men that talk about A, imposter syndrome, and B, that kind of berating themselves over things. They tend to be able to let go of things much quicker than women.
Yeah, I think, again, we want to... imposter syndrome can make you feel like you don't belong. But I don't know how you were, but in social groups of females, if you're not putting yourself down, you don't really fit into the crowd. Like it's one of those things that I think we've been brought up as females. Like, I don't like this and I don't like that. And I started to refuse to do that in a conversation with girlfriends. Like, I'm not going to put myself down. So I'll listen to you all. Or I might say to you, that's not really a nice thing to say about yourself. But I started to say to myself, when you're in those situations, you're not going to join in. Yeah. And certainly, if we had to say out loud what we said to ourselves in our heads, like, we would just... there's a really powerful video. I'll share the link with you, and you might want to share it in your group, of a guy who gets all these girls to say out loud what they say to themselves as if they're saying it to their sister or their friend. And it's really powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, we've got to question these horrible things that we say to ourselves and start to speak to ourselves with much more compassion. Even if we don't get things done like we wanted to, you still have to be horrible to yourself.
But don't you think it's that thing of women are not very good? The other thing we're not very good at is putting our hands up and saying, listen, I'm really proud of doing this. Look what I'm doing. I'm really doing a great job. We're not very good at putting ourselves forward, even when we're showing up all the time, doing these things, amazing things. We're just not good at patting ourselves on the back, are we?
No. And I remember when I worked in the corporate world, we had this boss who used to say, if there was someone who was in a meeting saying, I've done this, I've done that, and he's like, they're blowing smoke up their own arse. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. What I say to my clients and anybody is just start to recognize it yourself. Like, you don't even need to tell anyone else. Like, I get people to every night at the end of the day, just write 3 things down that you did well that day. And you start to build up a catalogue. You know, it's like building a wall. You've put 1 brick down. I've noticed 3 things I've done well today. You might never have done that before.
That's a really good idea.
And then you put another brick and then another brick. And this notebook turns into a wall that is full of things about what's good about you. What have you achieved? And it doesn't need to be big things, because the big things come from us doing tiny things like picking up the phone or asking somebody for something. It's not the actual achievement that's the big thing. It's the steps that you did to get to that achievement. And what that does, that starts to build your inner confidence to go, okay, oh yeah, actually, I'm doing all right. And to start with 3 things might feel really difficult. Like thinking of 3 things, some people really struggle. And what can happen is it's all work related. So it can be just that you were kind to someone, you know, you helped someone with their shopping, or you smiled at a stranger in the street. Like, you've just got to start to see yourself as the beautiful human being that you are. And that will just ripple effect. So I'm not very good at shouting about myself and that self-promotion about what I've done well. But I do it to myself. At least I'm having that conversation with myself, even if I'm not sharing it out there with the world.
Yeah, like you say, you don't need to. You just need to be at peace with yourself inside you, don't you? That carries you forward every day with confidence.
Yeah, because then you can show up better.
Yeah.
If you're reaffirming, and listen, I say I'm not helping people change themselves. I'm just helping you realize what's already in there. We're not doing anything new. We're just stripping away all this bullshit that you've been carrying around for years and allow you to truly see what is magnificent about you and has always been that way. What
kind of age group are your clients? Are they a real mixture, or do you find it's kind of hits a certain age more?
I don't think it. I think it hits any gender. I think it's any age group. Really, it starts when you're young. So if you can get someone young to start to change the way that they have been programmed and get them to change early on, wonderful. interestingly, I've worked with some young girls. It didn't come from imposter syndrome, but actually underneath all the layers of what's going on with them is sitting the imposter syndrome. So I find that a lot of my clients who come to work with me are sort of in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And I don't know whether that's because it's my demographic, because I'm from a corporate background and these women are working in the corporate world. I'm not really sure, but I do have male clients. I just don't promote to male clients, but they normally come through. I've worked with someone or someone's been to one of my workshops, and that's how I get introduced to my male clients. But yeah, it is definitely more in women. Research shows that. There's lots of research been done. And definitely we experience it more. And I think that is just through the way that we are brought up. But yeah, it doesn't discriminate. It can literally bite anyone on the ass at any time.
It does.
Like you say, you were 46, you're going into something new. And can crop up at any time.
Yeah, and I had it when I can see now, looking back, it stopped me from doing so much when I was younger. Because I lacked confidence in myself. And now it's that fear of you can't let something like that stop you reaching your full potential, because it can be that barrier, which is huge for some people. Yeah,
I used to just say no to so many things. And sometimes I was pushed into doing things even if I didn't want to do it. Now I just say yes, and then you just figure it out. And nothing is ever as bad as you expected it to do. And you always do way better than you thought you were going to do.
And how about, because it can be quite tiring doing this kind of work on yourself, can't it? So how do you switch off? Do you do yoga, meditation? What's the best way to switch off from it all?
For me, I sort of have a morning routine. So I start my day well. So I do a mixture of either walking the dog, yoga, meditation, journaling, all those different things, just to set myself up to start the day well. I think if you start your day well with a good mindset about yourself and you feel good, then I think that goes into your day. For switching off, I love being out in nature. Like anytime, just stop, drop and get out. Just get outside and breathe some fresh air. That works really well for me. And I think for me, switching off from the outside world sometimes, just no TV, I don't watch the news. I've not watched the news in years. And I think that's been good for me during lockdown.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I find out what's happening through sometimes on social media or people around me, but I'm really careful about what goes into my brain. And then sometimes I'm just Netflix. That's how I switch off, is just switch off from anything and just watch. I'm loving Queer Eye at the moment.
Oh, I've not discovered that one yet.
Oh, now that if you want to know about self-compassion, self-love, self-care, these 5 guys go and help people each episode to do more of that in their life. So that's the thing. Even though I sort of think of it sort of like a work thing, but that for me is switching off, watching something wonderful like that is actually fulfilling and makes you feel good.
Yeah. Because obviously, like you've just said about the social media, I can imagine has probably made imposter syndrome even harder for some people, because there's that comparison all the time. If it's on their feed daily, it's really hard to ignore, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, we're comparing our inner world to someone's highlight reel. We're trying to compare apples and lemons. And you can't do that, because people aren't being always showing that side of them. I think social media can be wonderful, because actually online helped me to understand what imposter syndrome was. I didn't know what it was until we had the ability to connect with other people online. So it has its benefits, but definitely it can perpetuate when you're thinking that you're not doing very well, or you're not moving fast enough, or, I found this a lot in lockdown. Some people have gone big on goals. They've decided that this time is the time for them to up level in their career, their skills. And then there's other people who've actually had to take a step back and slow down. Maybe not have invested as much time in their business as they normally would have done, like yourself, not being able to work. It can show up for people like you're comparing yourself to how someone else has handled this year. And you've just got to realize, yes, we could have done more, but we do what's best for us. We're all individual human beings. And while some people want to shoot for the moon and in this time go for it, if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's not compare ourselves to somebody else, because we only have a snippet of the information about that person.
Yeah.
And if we actually really knew what was going on behind the scenes, and I think there's this thing about women as well, like we can have it all. We can have it all, but we just can't have it all at once.
Yeah.
And we look at other people, and my clients do this. They work with people and they say, but she seems to have it all. Because somebody can put on a wonderful mask and portray that they've got it all figured out. But when you really talk to anyone, girlfriends, sisters, anybody, none of us have really got everything in our life figured out. And we're not, if we're doing well in one area, something is always slipping in another area, because there's only so many hours in a day.
It's like the duck with the head above the water and the feet paddling like mad underneath, isn't it, to keep afloat and keep going. Yeah.
And that's back to the self-compassion. Is just show yourself some compassion. Like, you can do it all, but you can't do it all at once. And if you were doing it all at once, you're probably not doing it all very well. You're probably trying to do the best you can, but actually it's impossible to be able to do it all well, all at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's such an important topic, because it affects so many of us at different stages. So it's really interesting. How can people
realize we're not alone? We're just
exactly.
We're not alone. You're not alone. If you're experiencing this, you're with me and Rachel. We experience it.
Yeah.
And the research says 7 out of 10. So if you're ever in a meeting or on a Zoom call and there's 10 people on there, 7 people on there will be feeling exactly how you do.
That's a really good thing to have in your head, actually. That statistic, because it does remind you actually that you aren't on your own. And having these conversations and talking openly about it is really good as well. How can people find you, Tricia?
I normally are mostly on Instagram under the Imposter Solution, or either on my website. I've got some free resources on there at trishabarker.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
And enjoy paddleboarding.
Yes, I can't wait.
I want to do it.
I do. I've wanted to do it for ages, and she's such a great advocate for it. So I'm really looking forward to doing it. And it was pouring down with rain this morning, but it's just stopped. So fingers crossed it'll be dry.
Have fun.
I will do. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. So lots of great advice there from Tricia, and I'm sure we're not alone in discussing imposter syndrome and realising that we've all had to deal with it and manage it at some point in our lives. So lots of great advice and tips which I hope you can all take on board. And I will be back later in the week. So for now, have a great day.